if you were in my camp, what is
I'm
that?
not going to give you my best advice. I'll give you like the B or C level advice.
Okay, give me the B plus
All right,
advice.
because the secret stuff I'm not sharing.
No, what you got? What is your secret stuff? Why don't we go right to there?
That's secret for
What is it? Is it technical or is it substance?
It's all of it. I can
policy?
design your presidential run in a way
I'm
where
not
you
talking
would
about
win.
a president. We're not talking about presidential run. This is not
That's
about
all right.
that.
No.
You got, by the way, you guys are so obsessed with the idea that every goddamn thing I do, I said it again. Yeah, I said it again because I needed your emotional reaction. That everything I do is framed in that context. It's a talk about Trump derangement syndrome. I think you got one with California and me.
So Gavin Newsom, governor of the state of California, has decided that he is going to launch, while he's governor of the state of California, his own podcast. And on his first episode, he decided to have Charlie Kirk on said podcast. And while we didn't learn a lot about Gavin Newsom's positions, it wasn't all that interesting in terms of what he said, we did learn that Gavin Newsom is actually quite the terrible presidential candidate, and there's a lot of truth in the fact that Democrats cannot stand up to long formats, because Charlie Kirk, who I didn't believe right off the bat would be the best person to go into Newsom's house and set the whole thing on fire, absolutely destroyed him, dominated him. He made fun of him throughout the course of the podcast, and the clips do not do it justice. I highly recommend that you guys go to the link in the description and watch the podcast in its entirety, because Charlie completely killed him. Again, this was wild, and I think we might be on the verge of Gavin Newsom canceling his podcast because his appearance was this bad.
Because I think people need to understand your success, your influence, what you've been up to, and the fact that you're on these college campus tours. And to your point, man, you just open up. I mean, you're like, ask me anything.
Anything.
Challenge me, whatever. When did this whole thing? When did you start putting this together?
So first of all, there is a lot of flattery from Gavin Newsom to Charlie Kirk throughout the course of this interview. Maybe he's under the impression that if he butters Charlie Kirk up, therefore he would not go after him anymore. He'd become a soft supporter of Gavin Newsom. But the fact of the matter is, Charlie Kirk rebukes this time and time again. And one of his best lines early on was related to Gavin Newsom's kid supposedly being a fan of Charlie Kirk, and Charlie saying, well, did you let him out of school in order to meet me? And Gavin's like, of course not. That's ridiculous. And then Charlie drops this line about how long.
The worst part, though, Charlie, no BS, true story. Literally last night, trying to put my son to bed. He's like, no, Dad, what time? What time's Charlie going to be here? What time? And I'm like, dude, you're in school tomorrow. He's 13. He's like, no. This morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is,
you canceled school for like 2 years. One day.
The point is the point.
Governor Gavin Newsom ended up closing the schools during COVID, and Newsom has no retort. Now, we're going to break this down. We're going to talk about this. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Here she is on her show a little while ago articulating her case for allowing men to compete against women. And I couldn't find the original video on Emma's channel, so I'm pulling this from this clip from a video on the channel Actual Justice Warrior, which you should check out to hear his take on this as well.
So first of all, thank you, Matt Walsh, for endorsing quite literally everything that I've ever said on this channel. Now, if you would kindly follow me on twitter.com. Also, if you ever need a full clip of anything that I use in my videos, they are linked in the description under where it says sources, and I typically label them pretty damn accurately if you need to find them. But again, I appreciate the love. I appreciate the shout out. AJW is the nexus between all sides on the internet.com. Watched by Matt Walsh, watched by Anna Kasparian.
But overall, I agree with Sean, the guest who was on Tim Pool's show. He creates content on YouTube under Actual Justice Warrior if you want to check out his content. But what he says there is totally true.
Left and right coming together, all behind my big 10,000 IQ, and that is just proof positive of it. But again, we got a podcast with Charlie Kirk and Gavin Newsom to get into.
But what do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Get better ideas, Governor.
Is
like,
it
for
ideas?
example, I mean, like, if you want to, like, you have an opportunity to, like, run to the middle and see this man. So obviously you're talking to me about people.
Yeah.
So, like, you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
So look, there's a lot of focus on this particular exchange between Newsom and Charlie Kirk related to trans as athletes in high school and college sports. I'm going to play a little bit for you, and then I'm going to tell you some of the reactions from both sides.
No, and I appreciate
but like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is an issue of fairness. So it's deeply unfair.
Would you speak out against this young man, A.B. Hernandez, who right now is going to win the state championship in the long jump? I can see you wrestling with it.
No, I'm not wrestling. I'm not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you. By the way, as someone with 4 kids, you got
and 2 daughters, right?
2 daughters.
And I have a daughter too.
And a wife that went, God forbid, to Stanford and played on the junior national soccer team, and a guy who got into college only because I was left-handed and could throw a baseball a little bit or hit the ball for a little bit. So I revere sports, and so the issue of fairness is completely legit. And I saw that the last couple of years. Boy, did I saw how you guys were able to weaponize that issue at another level.
Not weaponize. That's
well, weaponize may be pejorative. You're right.
So first of all, again, credit to Charlie Kirk for trying to put him on the spot on his own show so Gavin Newsom can actually take a position on this, and discredit to Gavin Newsom for playing both sides of it by saying, oh, I was an athlete, I had a bad SAT score, but I was left-handed and I played baseball and that's how I got into college. And also, in addition to that, competition matters a lot to me, so I understand the unfairness element of it, but also, in addition to that, I would like to add on top of that, I don't really care for how people describe the trans as athletes in these marginalized communities, because they are in fact marginalized. Also, I don't know if you guys are aware, I'm Gavin Newsom. I like baseball, left-handed. That's how I got into college. But really, you shouldn't talk down to the trans as athletes. Again, the Newsom doublespeak on full display right here, but this did not have the intended effect. Newsom essentially was trying to satisfy everybody, but he ended up satisfying absolutely nobody, which may be something that his wife experiences. But who am I kidding? That was a horrible joke, because Gavin Newsom, very, very handsome man. Let's be honest about that. For a politician, even though he's a little snaky and he looks like Christian Bale from that Psycho movie, but I'm not throwing any shade. I apologize for that. I withdraw the comment. I'm going to edit this out.
But you were able to
shine a light on,
highlight it in a way that, frankly, there are not that many out. We're talking about, I think, the NC2A, what, 510,000? No, but I just didn't realize.
It's 890 medals and trophies that we know of in the last 5 years. That's a lot.
No, so let me step back, say completely fair on the issue of fairness. I completely agree. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed on the issue?
No, I get it.
At the same time, deal with the unfairness.
So you asked a good faith question, like how do we Democrats get out of the wilderness?
Yeah.
This one is an 80-20 issue. New York Times poll, right? That's
no,
not
I agree with you. We're
getting
crushed on it.
Crushed.
So most people on the left read this as Gavin Newsom abandoning the trans as athletes, betraying the trans as athletes, despite the fact that Gavin Newsom has a long history of supporting the LGBTQ XXII community, and in reality and actuality, he was again trying to play both sides. But I will point out that it would have been smart for him to make a clear and unambiguous stance on the correct side of that issue, because recent polling data has come out and shown that 79% of Americans do not want biological males competing in female sports, which means that 79% of Americans understand that the whole point of female sports is to exclude males from the competition. Men's sports, also known as sports, is about maximizing competition. Anybody can be in men's sports, whether they are male or female. If a lady can throw 97 miles an hour, has a 6 slider, then guess what? She should be able to pitch in Major League Baseball. We don't need a women's league for that individual if she's good enough to compete with the men. However, for women's leagues to even exist, they have to operate based on the premise that they're limiting competition, not maximizing competition. So again, this is an easy issue. It's a layup. The distinction between men and women is obvious to everybody out there. The intent and purpose of each of these leagues is obvious. And in addition to that, when you have all these scholarships and guarantees and government programs that make a lot of these sports exist on the high school and college level because of you're trying to fight against sexism and whatnot, it just makes sense to keep female sports for females, people that are born women, not people who transes is. Now, I don't hate the transes is or anything of the sort, and the majority of people, that nearly 80%, don't hate the transes is, but they understand in this circumstance in particular, it is completely unfair, completely biased, completely unreasonable, and this is why you have such broad agreement. But Newsom, again, being the weasel that he is, never actually fully commits to that. He says, oh, the unfairness issue is something I consider and I think is very serious, but remember, Charlie Kirk asked him, him and pressed him to say that this person who is going to win the long jump competition or whatever competition should not win. And Newsom said, oh, I can understand the unfairness, but again, I'm worried about how people talk about the marginalized. Apparently, we don't use butter anymore. It's all margarine. And I promise, guys, I'm going to stop with the bad jokes, but you get my point. He's weaseling around this, but credit to Charlie Kirk for taking him to task on this.
It's not just acronyms that we dislike, for the record, but it's what
feels like that sometimes. I mean, how about the book ban stuff? On a serious note, 4,240 books or titles, libraries and schools are banned in 2023. Is that not, as a conservative?
Well, it depends. I mean, I think we can both agree pornography should not be taught to 9-year-olds.
Yeah, fair point.
Okay,
fair.
so that's a book ban.
All right.
Now, look, there are great clips throughout the course of this podcast, but the reason I wanted to jump to this clip in particular is A, it's not getting as much play as the trans as athletes clip, because again, that's creating controversy among the left and the right, who don't understand that Gavin Newsom was trying to weasel out of taking any position, but everybody seems to think that he took the position that they don't like based on that clip. But right here, Gavin Newsom's trying to push back a little bit. He's trying to use a Democratic Party talking point about book banning in the state of Florida and across the country, and Charlie Kirk is not having it. And guess how fast Gavin Newsom is going to jump off of this point when Charlie Kirk starts pressing the issue, starts throwing it back in his face.
Moms for Liberty contention, timeout. Yeah. Like, I agree with Bill O'Reilly. The Moms for Liberty movement that you made a big thing of was just no porn to 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
We agree. So those books should be banned.
Well, okay.
So what we should do right now is every California school that has porn in their library should be kicked out.
Does that include the
book
Bible?
Ban. Well, I wouldn't say the Song of Solomon is porn.
No, but I mean, some have made that point. Is that a fair point? Or
I don't think that's fair.
And as a man of faith, and I deeply admire that about you.
Thank you.
Sincerely.
Yes, but no, I mean, again, the Song of Solomon is rather risque.
No, it's
but
very,
what we're talking
so
about in these books is not just the words, it's also the images. And again, your audience can look at the images themselves.
Okay.
It's highly graphic. But again,
it seems a banning binge. I mean, at next level, sort of cancel culture.
But why do you think moms are doing that? Do you think it's because they want to have mind control, or do you think that they have come across incident of highly provocative material?
I love moms, but this moms, I mean, we don't have to get into Moms for Liberty. It
you
seems
brought up the book bans, though. I mean,
deeply organized for a larger agenda, but that's my humble opinion.
No, but let me just, kind of complete the point. Is that it's easy to just call it kind of a book ban, but when you actually have to read some of these books, it will take your breath away of some of the stuff, right? You're like, okay, we're teaching a 10-year-old how to put a condom on.
Yeah, Newsom folds immediately, and then he says he doesn't want to stay on or he doesn't want to talk about this topic, something to that effect. But I will remind you that Gavin Newsom brought the topic up. Gavin Newsom was running advertisements and billboards in the state of Florida talking about how California is free compared to the state of Florida, when in reality, he just doesn't have any backing for this point, because the left never had any backing for this point. Because, by the way, if you guys are unaware, the books that they claim are banned in Florida or most of these red states aren't actually banned. What happens is that a parent can complain, it will go to a review, and then they will determine whether or not, based on that review, the book gets removed from the library or not. Again, it's not banned in any way, shape, or form, but even the ones that are banned, that do complete the process, a lot of them have very adult-oriented images. In fact, if I showed you any of these books on this particular channel, any of the pages, this video would get banned from YouTube.
I know. I just have a problem with, who the hell is going to decide that? Government? I mean, Ron DeSantis is going to decide what I can read or say in the boardroom, in the classroom?
This is the exercise of politics, though. Yeah. The exercise of politics is the highest form of community because it blends morality and sociability. So what we do is we have discussion and elections, and we have boards and commissions, right? And we as a people say, okay, no porn for 10-year-olds. Yeah. And that's politics, right? I mean, I'm not saying that there's
we got to stress test whether the Bible's included in that. I don't even want to go forward anymore on this. No, it's tough, but this becomes a dialectic.
I mean, just think about what Charlie Kirk managed to pull off right here. Gavin Newsom thought, because he's on MSNBC and CNN and in all these left-wing bubbles and in these left-wing circles, that he had a slam dunk on Mr. Kirk. But then he ends up agreeing to the premise as laid out by Charlie Kirk when he talks about, yes, we have the right to restrict materials in the schools. We would not allow pornographic materials in the schools. And Gavin Newsom agrees to that, so he agrees to the premise. Then all of a sudden, Newsom starts talking about how the Bible might be pornographic, and therefore should the Bible be restricted from the schools, which is one of these tricks where you play on the religious nature of the right-wing person, which, by the way, Charlie Kirk is a religious person, self-reported. But in reality, there's two things wrong with this example. First and foremost, you're comparing the text of the Bible to the actual images, which, again, if you've seen them, you know what I'm talking about. And B, The left wing is in favor of removing the Bible from public schools, separation of church and state, so you wouldn't have Bibles all over the libraries and in the classrooms at all under Gavin Newsom and many of these left-wingers' rules and what they want to set up. So everything that he's bringing up right here is a terrible argument that, again, ends up not satisfying anyone, and I understand why Gavin Newsom had to bail out of that super quickly. Now, this is genuinely why I think Charlie Kirk was so wonderful in this particular conversation, because Gavin Newsom is trying to be conciliatory. He's trying to be friendly, trying to keep up that friendly atmosphere, talking about, oh, the Democrats are doing real bad. Why do you think we're not doing so well? And all of that. And then Charlie Kirk is giving answers in a calm, not yelling, not angry way, but they're direct answers. He's not being charmed away by Newsom. So what ends up happening here throughout the course of this conversation is that Gavin Newsom looks incredibly weak, incredibly cowardly, can't hold to a single argument, can't hold to a single position. And in addition to that, Kirk is well versed in the problems in the state of California. And when Gavin Newsom is confronted with something that he absolutely cannot defend, he ultimately ends up retreating back to, well, I didn't know about that. I'm not the governor of, or the mayor of this particular city. So how could I possibly understand that?
Democrats. The third one, though, is quality of life. Is quality of life.
I agree with you on this one, especially.
But like, I mean, look,
no,
I know
homeless encampments out of control, unacceptable.
Yes,
issues of just quality of life as well as the crime.
You know where I'm going with this. Why is it you were able to clean it up for Xi Jinping?
But that was you guys. That was the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. By the way, you guys weaponized that. I saw that on 25 things. It was the most ridiculous. That was, you know what? I will happily revert back to your counterpoint
as
weaponized. In this case, weaponized. Weaponized.
Can I get the Xi Jinping streets back?
Give me a break.
No, but Governor, with all due respect, I saw a beautiful picture of San Francisco that looked like Singapore. By the way, and then Xi Jinping leaves and the Walking Dead come back.
By the way, it was APAC. You had dozens and dozens of foreign leaders. And California is not San Francisco, but I am the governor of California, not the mayor of California, not the mayor of San Francisco.
You were the mayor, but I just want to understand, why is it that we have to clean it up? But you have to admit, it's emblematic of something that if enough important people show up, it can get clean. So why not make it clean all the time?
That's exactly by the way, that's my energy. I think you've missed a lot of my press conferences. I've been saying that to all these mayors. State vision is realized at the local level. It's about accountability, transparency. If you can't clean up the streets, we're going to redirect the money.
I hope the new mayor can do that, right?
Clear.
He seems to be more moderate than the other.
Great progress is being made. By the way, what's going on with homelessness in all these red states?
But again, Charlie does not let him off the hook. He presses him repeatedly. He brings up the fact that when Xi Jinping of China ended up visiting San Francisco, Gavin Newsom and the local leadership in San Francisco went out of their way to clean up the filth, the disgust, all the different problems with the homelessness and the drug usage on their streets. And Charlie Kirk asked, why don't you do that for the regular residents of San Francisco? Why don't you do that for the regular residents of the state of California? Why do you care more about the opinions of foreign leaders than you do about your own citizens, about your own constituents? And Gavin Newsom doesn't have a good answer for this, except for, of course, I'm not really the governor of the city of San Francisco. I'm the governor of the state of California. I'm not the mayor. And of course, Kirk points out, you were the mayor. You were in this position. These problems still existed. And make no mistake about it, Gavin Newsom endorsed a ton of these bills that made it worse. Remember, he fought for Prop 47 back in 2014, and then he used every dirty trick behind the scenes. We have a whole video on this in order to prevent the repeal of Prop 47, which is Prop 36, from passing. Charlie Kirk also brings up another proposition which would have allowed racial discrimination. It was voted down by the residents of the state of California, even during the Black Lives Matter fervor, but guess who endorsed it? Guess who signed his name to it? The guy who's totally not on board with the woke stuff, the guy who's totally just like you guys out there in the audience, Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I mean, Minneapolis literally had to hold a special vote saying, like, should we still have a police department?
Yeah, that was lunacy.
I mean, but Governor,
lunacy. And by the way, you're talking to someone who's never supported the defund police movement.
I know, but
I was explicit.
But also, one second, you did support Prop 16 in 2020, which would have legalized racial prejudice, right? Prop 16 literally would, and it
I have to go back to my Prop 13.
You're smart. Prop 16.
I taught 960 SAT, so a little humility.
Hold on, no, you're the governor of the largest state in the country. No. I saw your debate against DeSantis. You're good at this stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Prop 16 would have had legalized racial prejudice, which would, and it got defeated by 16 points despite all the institutions. Yeah. So you're asking me, what did wokeism look like when California, when all the institutions, yourself included, with all due respect, embraced this insane ballot measure guess what? Even the people of California didn't want
Yeah, I mean,
racial discrimination.
Now, look, I would say that Charlie Kirk cleaned Gavin Newsom's clock, but in reality, in actuality, I always found that expression weird because if a man takes time out of his day in order to clean my timepiece, I wouldn't be angry about it. I'd thank him and maybe give him a little bit of a tip. But Charlie Kirk definitely 100% dominated this conversation, humiliated Gavin Newsom, and he did it calmly. He did it with a smile on his face. And my reservations about him being the first person to appear on this show have been totally muted, totally nerfed. Charlie Kirk may be the best person to go on here because a Ben Shapiro type, while he might be a technically better debater, is somebody who's going to talk really fast and, Gavin Newsom is going to outcharm him. Charlie Kirk beat Newsom in charisma as well as in the actual content of the conversation. Again, A+, first class all the way. Really appreciate this conversation, Mr. Kirk. If we have any disagreements or whatever, that's set aside for this moment right here because you absolutely killed it and you do have my praise. But of course, those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below, not just based on the clips that I showed, but please watch it in its entirety, or if you've already listened to it, let me know what you think. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me in the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Charlie Kirk completely humiliating Gavin Newsom. Till next time.